So this is where someone can screw up, is they're thinking, okay, acorns again. Last year I had that great spot on top of that oak ridge, or completely different year, completely different situation. And I would say in most cases, anywhere, if habitat, food, water, weather, if it's not almost to the T from one year to the next, you're going to see completely different things when it comes to deer behavior, movement, and all that from each year.
You talk about the changings of seasons from year to year and how not everything's the same. Like you were talking about a bunch of things that could be cause for bumper crop, for mass, bad mass years, drought versus wet years, a bunch of different factors there.
Yep.
Do you have enough history in some of these areas that in certain situations like drought years with bad mass, drought years with good mass, or vice versa, any kind of combination of stuff, where you can revert back to some areas where you've had past history where deer will go in those circumstances, and you can go back to those areas and find bucks in those areas in certain conditions?
Absolutely. Like, that's why it's good to keep notes. And like last year, for instance, even though we had a mass crop, we only had high elevation acorns because a lot of times when you get a frost, it'll be low elevation because the cold air will settle down in the valleys. So you didn't have any oak production down low. So then we also have the drought conditions where you have food way up high, water way down low, and then you got this wider gap. And actually, I noticed this last year more than anything, water was more important than the food. Like, they were bedding closer to water than they were to food, where I think water is a way bigger key than what a lot of hunters think. Everyone's thinking food, where it seemed like they wouldn't hit the oaks till well after dark. But down in the creek bottoms, you'd find daytime activity, and there's not an acorn down there anywhere. But yet that's where they were. Now this year is different because this year white oaks and red oaks produce. Last year just red oaks and high elevations. This year every elevation. I mean, it seems it's an even better crop this year. And I like the fact that this year, because I'm guessing we're going to have some drought conditions. Now we got food down low. I can relate a lot to some other years similar to this. And so this is where someone can screw up, is they're thinking, okay, acorns again. Last year I had that great spot on top of that oak ridge, or completely different year, completely different situation. And I would say in most cases, anywhere, if habitat, food, water, weather, if it's not almost to the T from one year to the next, you're going to see completely different things when it comes to deer behavior, movement, and all that from each year.
How are you spot checking areas for mass? Carrying binos, what's your process? Because this is a very important factor for people to go and do this. Andrew was doing this back 2 weeks ago, and same thing back by us. Again, a lot of oaks are really producing well this year, but last year it was not the case.
Yep.
So what's kind of your process? How are you going with spot checking elevations and what you're looking at to try to get a good idea of what's going to be like this fall?
Yeah, well, usually like in June, you got to go around usually with binoculars. Right now, given that they're more mature and these drought conditions, and when we do get rain, it's a thunderstorm, every oak tree that has acorns is going to have a few under it. It's not going to be loaded, or you don't want to see them or see the ground like marbles right now, because then you know they all drop prematurely because of the drought. But I've never seen drought conditions, I know it's possible, but completely devastate our acorn crop. But there's a handful under every oak tree right now. Like, that's how easy it would be to find them. I think if we hadn't had some of the storms or some of these drought conditions, it'd be a little harder. You'd probably have to, use binoculars and that. But it can be really hard with binoculars, because a lot of your acorns on these oak trees, they're not on every branch. Like, they're kind of on the upper crown. And so if you don't get the right angle, you can't just look up through and see them. So that's why it's nice right now, is any oak tree, like I said, you should be able to walk under it. And if you don't see an acorn, one or two on the ground, or I preferably even like to find a fallen branch, because if you start to see those big clusters, then you know you're in the money. If you start to see branches in 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, and that's about it, then you're not going to be in for a long-lasting acorn pattern,
So, but I know Andrew wants to talk so bad, but while we're on this topic, talking about reverting back to certain conditions in past years similar conditions as maybe this year, and you kind of revert back to some of those areas and how that hunted. This is a great example of why it's important for people to probably take some notes kind of throughout each season, because I'm real bad about that. Andrew does a lot better job than I do, but still not even close to probably what you're doing. What is, and I know this doesn't necessarily get into summer scouting, but we're going to keep talking summer scouting. What kind of notes are you taking in order to build some, not just history, but build some data that you can revert back to for future reference?
Yeah, and I mean, once again, we've kind of already hit the nail on the head. My notes are basically weather, food related, even paying attention to like what the browse was like. I always just go low, medium, or heavy. Like, for instance, 2-year-old clear cut, I would say is heavy browse, but after 5-6 years, it'll start to turn to medium. And once you get to 10, it's low. Like, I always pay attention to how much, browse is in areas. Paying attention to how well the acorn crop is, what types of acorns that year, drought conditions. And then I also even throw in, like, sometimes if it's, a really abnormally warm hunting season, I think that can play a huge factor, or a lot of rain can play a huge factor. I mean, weather, food, habitat, I think that's the main stuff you need to pay attention to. And another big thing, once again, is I'm always noting individual deer. Not everything, maybe not every stinking picture I get of a certain buck, but I actually love it when I get a buck on camera in a place that I have never gotten him yet. Like, to me, that's like, wow, okay, now we know that that's part of his range. And you start to also ask yourself, like, wonder why he was there. And you start to try to collect that information too, because from season to season, like I keep saying, these bucks will shift. Like, they have a wide home range, and it's not always he's on this ridge every year. He uses this creek bottom at certain times every year. Sometimes he's just in his wide home range, and you got to know all the key features of where he's moving around from season to season.